Hey guys, welcome to a new movie review. Today I'm going to be reviewing a documentary for you today. This is also a sequel to the 2004 hit documentary Super Size Me. This film is also directed by Morgan Spurlock, who worked on that first Super Size Me movie. This time around, you guys, unlike the whole eating fast food for 30 days straight kind of thing with McDonald's in the first movie, in the second movie, even though it's still kind of a strike against the fast food industry, Morgan Spurlock is trying to make a film this time around that's more so about what would happen if you opened a chicken restaurant. You raised the chickens yourselves. You made sure that they had, like a free range, more of approach to the chickens and things like that. You had full creative control yourself. You made sure that anything that's labeled as healthy is healthy and things like that. So what if the big fix to the whole fast food thing is doing the restaurant yourself, doing what all these major restaurant chains should be doing instead. And so that's kind of more so the approach this time. Not so much eating 30 days straight, seeing the effect on a person, seeing how horrible the impact could be. It's more so this time around about, making the restaurant going a more healthier approach that may or may not be more effective than what the fast food companies are doing and things like that. And so Morgan Spurlock this time around is trying to focus on that, see if it works. It also shows kind of how chicken farmers gets downsized very easily by these big chicken companies, and how there will be days where you're on the top of the charts, you've sold the most chickens, you've sold the healthiest chickens to these chicken companies, and there'll be days where you're on the bottom of the list and you make no money at all. And clearly you sold more chickens than another farmer and things like that. And it's just this more, even the name of it was like tournament style chicken farming, or something along that line, and how it's just so competitive and how fast food chains need this stuff so bad now that either you make tons of money or no money off the chickens and things like that, and how it just can ruin your life, and how this one guy even admitted that he probably wouldn't pass on chicken farming to his child or grandchildren, just because by the time they become chicken farmers, it's going to be even more competitive for these fast food companies, and how this once innocent thing with farming is kind of getting more toxic and destructive and things like that. And so Super Size Me 2 explores all these things over about an hour and 45 minutes of a runtime. So overall, guys, I really enjoyed Super Size Me 2 quite a bit. I think it's a really good documentary. I think it is a good sequel to Super Size Me. I like the approach of doing something different, saying something different about the fast food industry, not just going on a 30-day eating all this junk food, eating all these unhealthy food at these restaurants, and proving a point. That point's already been proven in the first Super Size Me movie, so you have to do something else for a sequel. And Morgan Spurlock figured out what that was, and I think it's a very I think it's a very interesting approach. I think it's a very interesting way to do a sequel this time around, and to make a point about the fast food companies and not just repeat the same thing that you just did in that film that you did back in 2004 and things like that. So, for my positives and negatives of Super Size Me 2, you guys, this is a very fun and informative movie. Um, if you enjoyed learning about things in that first Super Size Me movie, you get more of that this time around. Morgan Spurlock tries to make it fun here. He does have the little animation things that happen in between scenes to kind of show examples of how chickens are raised and things like that. So if you like those little animations from the first Super Size Me, he does that again here in the sequel. And like I said, it is a very informative movie. There's certain things about chicken farming and about how restaurants get formed and things like that that I did not know before watching this movie. So like the first Super Size Me movie, I learned some things about the fast food companies and about chicken farming over the course of this movie. And once again, I really do like Morgan Spurlock as a host and the star of these movies. I know he's done some documentaries where he doesn't star himself, and he's done a lot where he has starred himself. So, like Super Size Me and Where in the World is Osama bin Laden and The Greatest Movie Ever Sold. And now this movie, and some other ones that he's worked on, he's starred in, and I really like him as a host and as the star and all that kind of stuff. I really like his presence. I like how he tries to make something fun. He adds some humor into the mix, even on some darker situations that he runs into. So I really like seeing Morgan Spurlock both behind and in front of the camera. I think he's very good at doing both things. And one major point here that the film does make, and it does address it in quite a few different ways that's very successful in this movie, is how fast food companies can trick us to believe that something is healthy. And really all they're doing is just using different paper packaging, using a different atmosphere when you're in the restaurants, like using natural wood and pictures of the food and pictures of salads, pictures of lettuce, pictures of fresh foods, pictures of vegetables, and how really what they're doing is since 2004 when that first Super Size Me movie was made, obviously the eating atmospheres in all these places are very different now. Really, they're just changing the inside of the restaurant. Really, they're not really changing anything about the food in that regard, and how like crispy chicken sandwiches and stuff. Like when they add tons of sauce, tons of toppings, white bread instead of wheat bread, and all this other stuff. They're really kind of not fixing a problem. It's still unhealthy junk food esque items that they're serving us. And so the film is making a point that yes, even though you do have the healthy lettuce and the healthy tomatoes and maybe a sauce that does have quite a few calories in it, but there's nothing absolutely horrible in it. And there's bread and cheese and stuff that can be good in certain levels, but at the end of the day, it's just the fast food companies tricking you into thinking that you're eating something healthy, even though you're still eating the same junk that you've been eating since 2004 and earlier. So that's another point that Super Size Me 2 is trying to make is they say that they're changed, but they really haven't changed that much since the first Super Size Me movie as far as restaurants go. The film also explores the use of organic and free range foods and how this appears on food labels and stuff like that, and how sometimes it kind of doesn't matter. When you're buying fresh chicken, you're buying fresh chicken. When you're buying beef, you're buying beef. Yes, I'm sure the shelf life and the preparation and the freezing process and how long it can stay out before you can't buy it anymore is still the same. But really, what's going on here is sometimes these food companies are going to tell you it's organic, or they're going to tell you that it's natural, or no hormones, or no GMOs, and things like that, and that it's free range cage-free animals that are being served to you and things like that. But really, at the end of the day, it's just labels that just made it like the farmers are just doing enough to get those labels onto the food and things like that. So it's one of those things where, yes, in a sense, you're probably buying something that maybe is a little more fresh than the regular chicken. It just says organic on it. But at the end of the day, they're both going to expire. They're both going to go bad if they're not in a fridge or a freezer within a certain amount of time and things like that. So Super Size Me 2 is making the point that even though the label tells you something, you're not always going to get what that label is promising you sometimes. The film also explores the marketing of new restaurants and kind of the process that companies go through to get made and get their restaurant up and going and things like that. All very interesting things. It was interesting to see kind of what Morgan Spurlock had to do to get a slogan for the restaurant, get a title for the restaurant, get approved, find land, find employees, find ways to market the place for your grand opening and things like that. So the film explores marketing of new restaurants, and I thought all of it was very interesting. And like I mentioned earlier, those little example animations from the first Super Size Me movie make a return in this movie. They also use them here for examples in this movie. All very good stuff. I really like how it makes the film more fun, more energetic, gives it a little sense of humor and things like that. All very effective things that they have returned from that first Super Size Me movie. For my negatives of Super Size Me 2 Holy Chicken, I thought personally this film wasn't as personal as the first film was. In that first film, we really kind of follow Morgan home and we follow kind of this journey he went through and kind of how as the days progressed, certain things in his life like breathing and his sleeping and how his romantic life and all this stuff were being affected by this diet he was doing. We really didn't get anything that personal here. We really get something that's kind of stretched out over a long period of time with the restaurant getting made and the farm getting made and the people to kind of make all this go through and things like that. It just didn't feel as personal this time around. We really didn't get to see a lot of how Morgan felt about the farms, how Morgan felt about his discoveries he found by opening this restaurant, how his insights and things like that. Yes, there's insights along the way on certain things. It, like I said though, it just doesn't feel as personal as that first Super Size Me film, which I think kind of hurts the sequel. I thought more time was also needed at the Holy Chicken restaurant. We really don't get to see the restaurant part of the movie until closer to the end of the movie, unfortunately. So if you're looking for a whole film about opening this new restaurant, it's kind of not about that really. It really is kind of about raising the chickens and finding out if they can find a way to truly make something organic and free range and things like that. There's really not a lot of time spent at that Holy Chicken restaurant like the trailers make you believe. So I thought that's something that the film could have explored a little bit more, even if it needed to be a little bit longer, like another 15, 20 minutes. I think the film probably could have benefited from that. I also thought this film wasn't as impactful as that first film was. I remember when that first Super Size Me movie came out, a lot of people were really surprised just how bad fast food can be for you. Like everybody knew about it, obviously, but like it was really was kind of brought to the test for that movie and really kind of showed a person going through 30 full days of nonstop McDonald's and things like that. This time around, I feel like there wasn't much of an impact. Like we learned about like the chicken farmers and things like that, but it just didn't feel as impactful this time around. I also feel like with the Super Size Me, the first Super Size Me movie, you can kind of change your eating habits after doing that movie. With this movie, I don't know what you could do as a person to kind of change your ways and things like that. So as a result, this film just didn't feel as impactful as that first Super Size Me movie for me personally, anyway. One thing that this film does that the first film shows like a surgery and Morgan having like a vomit attack in one scene. This time around, I feel like they do show you some images here where if you're really sensitive to certain things, don't watch this just because there is some imagery here that might hurt your feelings. Like for example, they show scenes where chickens get hurt on the farm. They show scenes that um, where kind of when you're walking on this land and there's all these little baby chicks all over the place and they want their water and their feed and things like that. Some of them could potentially get squished while you're doing that. So they do show scenes here that is a little kind of painful and hurtful to watch if you're really sensitive to chickens getting hurt and things like that. So like if you work for PETA, you might not like some of the things that they show you here in this movie. This is probably the first movie in a long time where I can actually say they probably didn't have the whole no animals were harmed in the making of this movie kind of thing, because they kind of were. Um, so I really enjoyed this movie though. I highly recommend seeing Super Size Me 2 if you like the first Super Size Me film. But like I said, there's just certain things about it, like not being as personal as the first film. More time was needed at the restaurant, I felt. Wasn't as impactful as the first film. And like I said, there is some imagery here where if you're kind of sensitive to like chickens getting hurt and things like that, you might not want to watch this movie as maybe as much as like a G or PG kind of movie. So Super Size Me 2, Holy Chicken, I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I recommend seeing it, especially if you like documentaries. In the first Super Size Me film, 8.5 out of 10 for me, gets my thumbs up.